you want to print guys like this. You've seen the cool time lapses online of 3D prints, and you've seen the super cool things that people print, and you're wondering, should I get a 3D printer? Then this video is for you. Specifically, if you are a DM who does crafting and are looking for a way to supplement your current crafting abilities and terrain or minis. I don't want this video to be a video where we talk about whether 3D printing is going to replace crafting. I don't think that's ever going to be the case. Just flat out, 3D printing is another tool. Just like a Proxon, just like a hot wire foam, just like a box cutter, there are different tools in the DM's toolbox. And so I just kind of want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons. If you're watching this video, you probably already do crafting, or you're interested in doing crafting and you're wondering about the 3D printer. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both, what the relationship is. 3D printing, you don't have to spend time with it hands-on. You spend a little bit of time with the software, you spend a little bit of time prepping it, and then you just press a button, and then anywhere from 4 to 20, 25 hours later, you have something. You have something. That's amazing. With 3D printing, you can just leave it and it goes. With crafting, you require the one-on-one time, right? With 3D printing, there's a ton of free models that you can make. So, for example, Miguel Zavala, this is his dragon. A Reaper dragon cost me a lot more than, maybe the couple dollars that this cost me to print. And sure, it's not perfect, right? It's not as amazing, but this is pretty damn cool. I like it a lot, and once I paint it up, it's gonna look awesome on my table. It's from Desktop Hero, which is a new app that lets you just create your own minis. So I made this guy, and I'm gonna paint him with my paint scheme. I can do whatever I want and have this guy print out 3 more of these guys. It'll cost me maybe 25 cents. A lot of really cool options for 3D printers. The thing is, when you're crafting, I don't have the sculpting skills with Sculpey or green stuff to make this guy. And definitely not to make this guy. I'll have to either spend the money on a Reaper on a mini or not. When it comes to terrain, much easier to craft the terrain that you want the way you want it when you're 3D printing. You don't really, versus 3D printing, I should say. With 3D printing, everything looks like somebody else's style. With handcrafting, I have my style. I'm making this right now. It's like a little series I'm making, a little set. Maybe I'll have some videos on this sometime if anybody's interested, but this is like my style. And sure, I use rollers from green stuff, but this is me. And when I put it on the table with the other stuff I've crafted, it's gonna look like me. This is gonna look like a 3D printed guy style. And sure, it can look similar to some other people who craft stuff like this, but that's not my style. It's not gonna complement in that way, and I need to be aware of that. It's definitely one of the pros and cons of doing that, right? With crafting, I need, I have this whole section here that's full of crafting materials. With 3D printing, I have a spool that I use for printing, and when I use that spool, I just put it on my printer, and then sure, I need a little bit of table space for my printer, but that's it. Maybe I have a couple of spools that are like this big in a box. Way better space-wise, way better. But it's loud. And you might need some things to reduce the noise depending on your printer model. So the other thing with 3D printing is, you can get these layer lines. So I try to print it at a low resolution, but here's a good example. So you can see the little marks in there because this model printed like this. You can also see the crack because of the way it did. I could have done some sanding, there's some post-processing I could have done to make it a little bit better, but that's just something you get. When you paint it up, it's going to look a little bit different than if you do handmade stackers. Compare the two. And this is my style. This is kind of my work, like that Runehammer style. I made these before I realized I could stack them. But, I made these, and it fits my other models, but this doesn't really. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to make it work. But I love these, so I printed them anyways. I just want you to see, style-wise, they're going to be different. And that's important too before you go out and buy and expect to be able to print a whole tile set. It might not look exactly the same, but if you're not paying super close attention, it can blend in very well. You'd be surprised. If you use this, then if you do the style, then great, but that's not my style. So just something to consider. And I consider it when I print. I'm so super happy with it. A little bit about the pros and cons. You know, I want to use real examples so that you understand what I'm talking about when I say this. It's not theoretical. It's not a talking video. I want to show you, and that's what I really want to do more often. Questions that I think you should ask yourself before you invest in a 3D printer. First, ask if this is a money decision. If you really think that getting a 3D printer is going to make things cheaper, that isn't always the case. There's a huge startup cost. You know, sure, the filament cost, you know, what it costs in filament to print is really cheap, but there are mods that you might have to buy if you really want to get your printer to print at the high quality that you'll come to expect of your minis or of your terrain. You know, you might need to buy a bed, fans, mods that you won't be able to print. And so it's important to recognize there's additional cost. Sure, there's tons of free model, but as well, if you want to buy quality, you'll need to invest. You know, I love this guy, but he costs like $10. And so unless you're subscribed to his Patreon, that's a cool way to get his minis. Actually, you might be able to get that one for free. I'll put the link down below. Now to think about it. Those models generally cost money, and printable scenery does some really cool stuff. There's a lot of people doing really cool 3D printing stuff. Fat Dragon Games, Heroes Horde. These are just a couple right now that are doing this stuff. But that costs money if you want the extra nice prints. So plenty of stuff for free to get you going. You'll have more than enough to print, believe me. But if you want the really nice stuff, it's going to cost you a little bit more. In my experience, pretty much comes out to about similar cost. But the other thing, you don't need the supplies. You just need some finishing supplies, simple files, and then craft paints that you're going to have anyways, right? Second question is, do you enjoy tinkering, messing with things manually, making manual adjustments to hardware? And are you comfortable with the learning curve? My natural instinct is to just give up on stuff when it doesn't work. I am that guy. I'm so grateful that I was given a 3D printer as a gift for my birthday from my wonderful, wonderful, wonderful group who all chipped in to get it for me as a surprise. It was one of the best surprises I could ever have asked for, because I stuck with it, and it took me about a month and a half, and then it clicked, and I started getting good prints. You'll see some failed prints. I had a ton of them. I was asking everywhere, all different forms. I just couldn't find it until it just kind of clicked, and it started working. And you might have to go through that too. Some people are really lucky, and they are, you know, they have a unbox, level their bed, boop, printing perfect prints, and that's awesome. But for a lot of people, it's not that way. So be ready for whatever printer you choose to get, having some issues and having a learning curve. If you're only interested in printing tabletop minis, it might be more cost efficient to just buy them from Reaper and WizKids. There's a lot more function to 3D printer than that. You can print some really cool busts. I'm busy printing a lot of other stuff that I actually want to use, but if you like that stuff, Batman, there's all sorts of really cool stuff on Thingiverse. So many free things available, even functional prints that will be valuable to you. Bottom line is, if you only want those things, I would consider maybe it's not the right time right now until it gets a little bit cheaper, or you can buy one of the cheaper ones and just not expect the quality that you might get from a more expensive printer. I hope that's kind of helped you think about whether you really want one. If you, after seeing this video, you're like, yeah, I still really want one, then awesome. I want to be here for you. If you have questions, if you know what your budget is, if you are wondering, you know, what you can, there are so many guides and tutorials about what printers are right for you. There's a subreddit called Printed Minis that has a guide there to get better prints. It helps me a lot. You can ask questions there. Super supportive and a really good resource. If you have any questions, or if I left anything unanswered, I'd love to answer them in the comments below. Maybe make another follow-up video if you do have any other questions. I will be putting out more videos. Things like, you know, what's the best way to generate support so I don't get a failed print, and how do I remove the supports from the really thin sword so that I don't get, you know, failed prints, so I don't get these things breaking off. It's happened to me. I'm getting better at it. You know, I've had to learn how to glue stuff and get things together so I can have, you know, kind of that cool crooked staff. If you're going to get a printer, you're going to have a lot of questions, and there's not a lot for the tabletop mini community. So I hope to be a voice for those, to be a gateway to a lot of the people that are doing amazing stuff in the 3D printing world. I'd love to answer your questions, and I'd love for you to participate moving forward. If you are interested, I will be posting more videos in the future, so let me know what questions you have, and happy to answer. Thanks again for watching, and happy printing.